My own brother swung a sledgehammer straight through my $15,000 mixing board. No hesitation, no remorse. "Maybe this will finally teach you to share, Madison," he shouted as sparks flew. My sister stood off to the side phone, up live streaming the wreckage with a smirk. No tears, no shame, just the satisfaction of turning my career into their content. So I stepped back, let the lights in my studio flicker to black, and walked out on their so-called family meeting. What they didn't know was that the story wasn't ending. It was only beginning. Before I get into it, hit like and drop a comment. Has your own family ever tried to cash in on your hard work? It's me, Madison, in this story. I'm 34 years old, a music producer who spent the last 15 years grinding from nothing into someone the industry actually respects. I didn't come from money, I didn't have a golden ticket, and I sure as hell didn't have family connections paving the way. What I had was a basement, a set of secondhand speakers that buzzed like angry bees, and an obsession with learning every knob, every wire, every way sound could bend into something beautiful. While other kids were heading off to parties, I was hunched over a cracked laptop, teaching myself how to mix beats that didn't sound like static. I worked 80-hour weeks taking on tiny gigs that barely paid gas money, but every mistake became a lesson. Every sleepless night became another brick in the foundation I was building. Eventually, those bricks turned into walls, and those walls became my studio, the place I thought would always be safe. From the outside, my family looked picture perfect. Holiday dinners, matching sweaters for photos, polite smiles on Facebook. But underneath that curated image, there was tension so thick you could slice it with a guitar string. To them, my work was sound stuff, just me messing with computers and calling it music. They didn't see the Grammy-winning artists I'd produced for the major labels that trusted me, or the contracts that carried my name. They saw one thing, an ATM with their DNA on the account. Jake, my older brother, had always been the man's man, the construction guy who bragged about his grit and mocked anything creative. He'd built up a business once, then drove it into the ground with bad decisions and worse temper. He never forgave the world for letting him fail. Emma, my younger sister, was all about the spotlight. She wanted followers, sponsorships, free stuff sent to her doorstep. She wanted the shortcut, the fame without the grind. To them, my success was unfair. I hadn't earned it, I'd gotten lucky, they said. And since I was lucky, I owed them. The worst part. For years, I tried to keep the peace. I paid for dinners, chipped in for emergencies, lent money that never came back. I thought maybe if I gave enough, they'd see I cared. But kindness only made them hungrier. Every dollar fed their belief that they deserved more. And then came the night everything snapped. I was driving home from what I considered the best session of my career, an artist everyone knew was headed for Grammy nominations. My phone lit up with congratulations from execs who rarely bothered to call. I was floating, until I turned into my driveway and saw my front door cracked open. The sound hit me first, metal, clanging, wood splintering voices echoing off walls that weren't theirs. I ran into the garage studio and my chest collapsed at the sight. Jake Hammer raised, sweat dripping. Emma phone lifted, narrating like a cruel sportscaster. They weren't there to visit. They were there to take. Jake didn't even glance up when I yelled his name. He was in a frenzy, Hammer, smashing through circuits and knobs as if each swing erased the years I'd spent building that space. Emma's voice cut through the metallic crashes, sharp mocking staged for her audience. "Look at her face," she said into her phone, protecting her toys instead of helping family. "This is what selfish looks like." Selfish. That word landed harder than the hammer. For 15 years, I had poured everything into this career, time, money, relationships, health, and the only thing they saw was greed. Not determination, not discipline, just selfishness. I lunged forward to grab the sledgehammer before Jake could swing again. He turned eyes, wild sweat dripping into the lines on his forehead. "Don't even think about it, Madison," he growled, lifting the hammer like a threat. "You're gonna listen for once in your life." Emma zoomed in with her phone like it was prime-time drama. "We're making her finally give back," she narrated. "She's been hoarding opportunities while her own family struggles. My body was shaking, not from fear, but from the realization of how far they were willing to go. Jake's construction business had tanked. He had unpaid loans, workers demanding paychecks that didn't exist. He wanted me to bankroll his comeback. Emma wanted introductions to labels' handshakes with artists she thought would make her viral overnight. In their minds, I was the answer to every failure they'd created. And that's when Jake laid it out like some twisted business pitch. $50,000 cash. You set Emma up with record label meetings. You hire my crew to expand this studio you've got here. Do that, and maybe we stop. I almost laughed. My career, my reputation reduced to ransom notes written on the back of family ties. When I pulled out my phone not to call a label, but the police, Jake shoved me hard. I stumbled backward into the wreckage, my ribs slamming into the edge of the broken console. Pain shot through my chest. Emma laughed and kept filming. "This is going viral," she sang, entitled "Sister Refuses to Help Her Family. Let the world see how heartless she is." In that moment, something in me cracked deeper than the broken equipment. I realized I wasn't just up against two desperate siblings. I was up against a plan. The spreadsheets I would find later, the fake contracts, the hours of edited footage Emma would post online, all of it was already in motion. This wasn't rage, this was strategy. Within days, Emma's videos painted me as the villain, cold, greedy, abandoning my own blood. Her followers ate it up. Comments flooded in. "Imagine being too selfish to help your brother and sister. She doesn't deserve success." My business accounts were swarmed with accusations. Potential clients hesitated. Contracts froze. Jake doubled down, showing up at my door with his crew of workers, demanding jobs he'd promised them, using my name. The breaking point wasn't one single blow. It was the slow, suffocating realization that every detail of my life had become their weapon. The siblings who shared my childhood were now dismantling my future one swing, one post, one lie at a time. And as I stood in the ruins of my studio ribs, aching reputation unraveling, I knew this wasn't a mistake. It was a declaration of war. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Every time I walked into what used to be my sanctuary, I saw shards of broken equipment scattered like reminders of my own stupidity, trusting blood to respect boundaries. The silence in that studio was louder than any music I'd ever produced. I couldn't sleep. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be another wave of strangers hurling insults parroting Emma's twisted live stream narrative. Greedy sister, selfish producer, heartless success story. Jake escalated. One afternoon, I opened my front door to find 5 men in hard hats standing on my porch. "We're here for the job Madison promised," one of them said flatly, holding a clipboard. Behind him, Jake smirked. He'd told them I was funding a big studio expansion that I'd personally hired his crew. When I tried to explain the truth, their faces hardened. They'd already invested time, already expected money. Jake had used my name as collateral for lies. The pressure built until I couldn't breathe. Emma kept posting clips edited to strip me of context, showing only my anger, my silence, my attempts to shield my studio. She framed it as proof of guilt. Comments cheered her on. Teach her a lesson. Family comes first. She quit her retail job, announcing to her followers that she was now a full-time influencer, ready for her big break thanks to me. One night, I came home to find the locks on my doors changed. My own house hostage under the banner of family intervention. Through the door, Emma's voice was sickly sweet. "Until you start sharing, we're protecting you from yourself." Jake bellowed something about motivation as another crash rang out from inside. Another piece of my studio smashed for an audience I couldn't see. I could have collapsed. I almost did. But something inside me shifted. Sitting in my car that night, parked outside the house I couldn't enter, I felt the burn of humiliation transform into something sharper. Resolve. They thought they had cornered me. They thought I'd fold under pressure. Pay the ransom, hand over my contacts. But they had underestimated the one thing I had spent 15 years building besides music connections. The next morning, I drove to the only relative who'd ever understood what it meant to say no to this family. David, my cousin, the black sheep. He opened the door with tired eyes and a smirk that said, "Took you long enough." When I spilled everything, the destroyed studio, the fake contracts, the live streams, he didn't look surprised. He just nodded. They did the same thing to me. Demanded money, trashed my place when I refused, turned the family against me. I walked away. You can't give them an inch, Madison. You have to fight back. So I started collecting. Every broken board, every slammed shove, every lie Emma posted online, I documented it all. Screenshots, photos with timestamps, audio clips of Jake's threats. And I remembered the hidden security cameras I'd installed in the studio years ago. When I pulled up the footage and saw it crystal clear, Jake swinging Emma, laughing, both of them making demands, it felt like holding a loaded weapon. That night, while they celebrated what they thought was my surrender, I was at David's kitchen table, files spread out like an arsenal. He poured coffee and leaned in. "They think you're broken," he said. "Good. Stay quiet. Let them believe it. Then we'll bury them with their own actions." And as the screen glowed with clip after clip of their cruelty, my chest stopped aching. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The day they came home, I wouldn't be cowering. I would be waiting. The so-called family intervention was scheduled like a holiday gathering. My parents' living room had been cleared, chairs pulled into a circle, food laid out as if shame needed catering. Aunts and uncles arrived early carrying casseroles and judgment. Cousins whispered in corners, already primed by Jake and Emma's version of events, selfish Madison, the sister who hoarded success. I walked in carrying a folder and a calmness I didn't entirely feel. The folder looked like surrender contracts, transfer forms, fake apologies I'd printed to play the part. Emma was already live streaming her smile, syrupy, her followers, watching the big moment. Jake puffed his chest like he was presiding over some corporate deal. Finally, he announced Madison has agreed to support her family the way she should have from the beginning. My mother actually sighed in relief. "Thank God she's being reasonable," she whispered to my aunt. No one looked at me. They were too busy congratulating themselves. I set the folder on the coffee table, straightened, and said quietly, "You want to talk about family loyalty? Let's show everyone what that looks like." I opened my laptop and hit play. The footage filled the flat screen. My studio intact for the last time, then the hammer swinging Jake's face twisted with rage, Emma's laughter rising over my cries. Their voices were clear as glass. $50,000 or we keep swinging. Look how selfish she is protecting her toys. The room went silent except for the sound of destruction. Jake shifted his bravado, cracking. "This is family business," he muttered. "You can't prove." Actually, I cut him off, voice steady. "I can." And I already did. I pulled up confirmation emails on the screen. "Jake, your construction license is under investigation for fraudulent advertising. You used my name and photos of my studio to scam clients. The licensing board got my report yesterday." His face drained of color. "Emma." I turned to her. She had stopped live streaming, fingers shaking on her phone. "Every platform you depend on, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, received evidence of your coordinated harassment and fake collaborations. Screenshots, timestamps, IP addresses. They're reviewing your accounts right now." Gasps rippled through the room. My extended family, who had swallowed Jake and Emma's story whole, were watching the real one unfold in high definition. Emma stammered, You can't just ruin my career." "You ruined it yourself," I said coldly. "I just pressed play." David, seated beside me, opened his own folder. And for anyone still doubting, he said, "Here's a history lesson. Jake has defrauded 3 business partners in the past. Emma ran scams on dating apps and crowdfunding sites. This isn't new, it's a pattern." The silence grew heavier. My father looked down at his hands. My mother's face had gone pale. Cousins whispered realization spreading like fire. Jake tried one last lunge. "You think your industry friends are going to save you? You think you can blacklist me?" I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. "No, Jake. I don't think. I know. Because while you were swinging that hammer, I was building a career on trust. Every label president, every artist, every executive I've ever worked with knows who I am, and now they know who you are. Emma dropped her phone. Jake's hands twitched, but he didn't move. The footage kept looping the hammer, the laughter, the shove that cracked my ribs. Then came the knock at the door. My lawyer stepped inside with a stack of envelopes. "Mr. Carter, Ms. Carter," he said crisply, handing them each one you've been served. The timing was surgical. Gasps again, chairs scraping as people stood. Jake ripped his envelope open, scanning the words he barely understood. Emma just stared at hers like it might dissolve. "This is insane," Jake barked. "We're family. You can't do this. You destroyed my studio. You extorted me. You weaponized social media to ruin my career." My voice didn't rise. I didn't need it to. Family doesn't erase consequences. Emma's eyes darted to the faces around the room, our aunts, cousins, even our parents. No one moved to defend her. The spell had broken. The footage had spoken louder than their years of manipulation. "You'll regret this," Jake hissed. I closed my laptop. I already regretted trusting you. That won't happen again. The lawyer packed up, nodded to me, and left. The rest of the family scattered, some ashamed, some silent. My mother tried to speak. "Madison, maybe we can work this out privately," but the words sounded weak, hollow. I stood, gathering my folder. You all believed their lies because it was easier than questioning them. Now you've seen the truth. What you do with it is on you, but as for me, this is finished. I walked out of that living room lighter than I'd felt in months. Behind me, Jake's rage boiled uselessly. Emma sobbed into her phone with no live feed to save her. Ahead of me, the air was sharp, clean, the night sky wider than it had ever been. For years, they'd mistaken my silence for weakness, my generosity for obligation. But that night, in front of every person who once looked at me with suspicion, I took it all back. My career, my dignity, my power. And I made sure Jake and Emma understood the lesson written into every broken piece of my mixing board. When you try to destroy someone who built everything from nothing, you'd better pray they don't have receipts. Because receipts can end careers, and mine were alphabetized. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift and brutal. Jake's construction license was revoked permanently. The board uncovered years of fraud once my evidence landed on their desks. Clients pulled out, workers demanded pay he couldn't cover, and the business he bragged about collapsed for good. Emma's influencer empire burned down overnight, every account banned, every sponsor gone, her carefully curated image erased with a single click of suspended. The extended family who once whispered about my selfishness now avoided eye contact, embarrassed at how easily they'd been manipulated. My parents, mortified, apologized in hushed tones that came far too late. David and I rebuilt what mattered, my studio, in a new location with tighter locks and clearer boundaries. He became more than an ally. He was proof that choosing truth over family dysfunction was possible. Most important, my name in the industry emerged untarnished. Executives respected how I handled the storm, with evidence, not excuses. Artists reached out with support, grateful I hadn't let toxicity derail the music. I didn't get back everything I lost. Some equipment stayed broken, some wounds stayed raw, but I gained something better: certainty. Blood may tie you together, but it doesn't obligate you to bleed for betrayal. Family love isn't supposed to look like extortion, and loyalty doesn't mean surrendering everything you've built. I learned that sometimes the hardest line to draw is against people who share your last name, but crossing it can save your life. Jake and Emma lost everything they thought they could steal, and I walked away with what mattered: my freedom, my music, and my voice. If this story hit you, share your own in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because you're not alone, and the next story might be the one you need to hear.